After an overtime loss to the Bucks over the weekend, Miami is locked into the play-in tournament. Where will they end up in the final standings? We break that down before looking at the future of some of the young players on the Heat roster and a proposed trade package for Luka Doncic on today's episode of Locked On Heat.
You are Locked On Heat, your daily Miami Heat podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome to Locked On Heat, your daily podcast on the Miami Heat. Whether you're tuning in on YouTube or your favorite podcast app, thanks so much for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. I'm Wes Goldberg here with David Ramil. Both of us are credentialed Heat media members who cover this team every day. For daily content on the Heat, click that subscribe button on YouTube. Make sure you're following us on your favorite podcast app, trying to get to 17,000 YouTube subscribers by the end of the season, and we are nearly there. Join 16,000 other subscribers as a Locked On Heat everydayer. A reminder that today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $250 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Have a great show for you today. There's questions about Jaime Jaquez and Nikola Jovic's future with the team, and one NBA insider has a hot take on what the Heat would have had to give up had they been able to trade for Luka Doncic. So we're going to discuss all of that, plus whether or not a Luka trade would have been worth it at the deadline. But first, David, I want to take you to my weekend really quick. I want to back up a little bit. Sure. My wife and I had to attend this baby shower over the weekend. And so, the baby shower is happening at the house. And so a bunch of the husbands, they go to a brewery nearby in Coral Gables. And I'm talking to one of the husbands, and, we kind of start talking about stuff, and we start talking about the Heat. And he says, yeah, I haven't really been watching much of the Heat lately this season. But he asked me a really simple question that I kind of had a hard time answering. Are the Heat having a bad season? And I think the easy answer is obviously, yeah, look at their record, play-in tournament, they lost Jimmy Butler, all these things. But is it crazy to me to point out just some of the good things in that conversation with this guy where it's they're not the Hornets, they're not the Jazz, they're not the Wizards. It's Tyler Hero was an all-star. People have stopped watching the Heat, so they haven't realized that Bam has actually come on really strong in the second half of this season, but he's been really good. There's things to like about this team. Was I just off base? Should I just have told the guy it's a bad year and just moved on, or was it worth pointing out some of the good things?
No, absolutely. I think you did the right thing in pointing out some of the positives. I will never lean into the idea that losing is a good thing. I was talking to Jackson Gatlin, who hosts Locked On Rockets. Mm-hmm. And I asked him because, it seemed like maybe Miami was heading towards that during the 10-game losing streak. And I didn't think they'd win a game again. And I wasn't sure exactly what that team was going to do. Now, the Rockets actively tanked for a long time after they traded James Harden and stuff like that. And you look at them now, they've turned into a pretty good team. That's never a guarantee. The Hornets have been a perpetually tanking team for the last 10 seasons. The Magic went through several seasons that were abysmal trying to get the top pick in the draft, and it didn't work out for them. Eventually, they wound up getting Paolo Banchero. But it was a long, arduous struggle for them to try and just be relevant. And you have teams like Chicago who are beyond mediocre, and they're just bad at times, and they've been bad for a while. So, embracing losing, to me, is never a worthwhile pursuit, because I think the odds of you coming out of the other end successfully are very, very rare. Yes, I understand the path to success is get a top pick and hit on a one-time generational player if you can. Sure. How often does that actually happen? You don't always get a Victor Wembanyama or a LeBron James or maybe a Cooper Flag. We're anointing this person as, fail for flag, etc. And we have no idea what kind of an NBA player. And I happen to believe that he's going to be a good player, but I don't know that you want to go through several seasons of losing the top teams in the the current draft lottery odds in order to be able to acquire Cooper Flag. It doesn't seem worth it to me. And there are positives.
There's
you can flip that around.
No, sorry.
Go for it.
No, I mean, there's a natural life cycle of teams being bad, right?
Yes.
Where Washington is right now. I wouldn't consider them tanking necessarily. It's just look, the Bradley Beal, John Wall thing didn't work. You probably strung it along a little bit too long, but you traded Bradley Beal, and this is what happens. You get bad, and that's a natural life cycle thing. It's another thing to do what Utah has done, where it says, Donovan Mitchell, Rudy Gobert, not good enough for us. We're going to trade these guys and do this for 3 years, and it feels like it's miserable to be a Jazz fan right now. But I want to go back to a term that you used before, relevant. Like Chicago doesn't seem relevant as much as the Josh Giddey thing is kind of fun and what. Like I'm not saying they don't have any good players, but are the Heat relevant? I still feel like the Heat they're not relevant to the championship conversation, but they're still a team that I think people care about. Across the league, they're one of those. They're one of those teams that just like, it's kind of just check in on the Heat every once in a while. How's it going over there?
I'd say so. I think the majority of peripheral fans on a national level probably understand that Miami's just having a bad season. Like they're not acutely aware of exactly how disastrous Jimmy Butler's presence on the team was and how the team has responded from that. And the fact that, that maybe this team doesn't have the brightest of futures, but at least there's a tangential kind of, they're the Heat. They've made some noise. They've been. I know this team. I see them in the playoffs. I see them.
Right. Tyler Hero's an all-star. That's a thing that we know.
I know who Bam Adebayo is.
Right. So we are. You mentioned in the tease going into the game, into the show today that the Heat lost to the Bucks on Saturday night. It's 2 straight losses. There's 4 games left in the season. Miami is 10th in the East as we're recording this on Monday morning. They're a game behind Chicago for 9th. They're 2 games behind Atlanta for 8th. Basketball Reference has them at a 65% chance of staying at 10 and a 21% chance of getting up to 9th, and then just over a 13% chance of moving into that 7-8 game. So slim odds of escaping the 9-10 game. They can't fall back. They're locked into the play-in tournament because the rest of the East, fortunately for them, is so bad that it literally does not matter what the Heat do. They can lose 10 games in a row and then win 6 out of 8 and then lose the next 4 if they want and still stay in the play-in mix somehow. But Miami would have to win out, and Atlanta would have to lose out in order for them to move up to 7-8. That doesn't seem like that's going to happen. So either the most likely scenario here is that Miami either stays at 10th or they win out, including beating Chicago on Wednesday. And then if Chicago loses to Cleveland on Tuesday, then the Heat will have a chance to move into that 9th spot. But either way, it kind of feels like we're going to the 9-10 game for the Heat. And it's just a matter of, okay, is that first game played in Miami or is it played in Chicago, or perhaps somewhere else on the road?
Right. Not great. The Milwaukee loss was a tough one.
That would pretty much killed it. The chance to move up to 7-8. That was pretty much it.
Yeah. The Memphis loss, again, at the buzzer, a good loss, especially coming after a good win against Boston. But you needed to try and secure that win against Milwaukee. You're at home. You're able to, you have a team that's shorthanded in the terms of the Bucks. They're missing Damian Lillard. It was a winnable game, and I know the 7-point deficit or whatever, they were up 7 in the fourth quarter. Milwaukee stormed back. Not a great look for a team that's blown a lead, but it's also worth pointing out, as much as they've blown a 7-point lead, a 7-point lead is almost the same thing as a 2-point lead in today's NBA.
Right.
With the frequency of a
even these
3-point
10-point leads. Oh, they blew this many double-digit leads. I'm like, there's a difference between a 20-point lead and a 10-point lead. Even
look, they've done both. They've done plenty of all of it. They've
Sure.
blown 7-point leads, they've blown 10-point leads, and they've certainly blown 20-point leads. But this was a little bit different. Now, I will say though that Bam Adebayo played a hell of a game, and he did everything possible to try and win that game, but did not get the kind of support offensively from other players. They kind of needed to do a little bit more.
They really missed Tyler Hero down the stretch of that game. That was the thing that kept jumping out to me. I rewatched the fourth quarter and overtime the fourth quarter of that game.
Who was your go-to scorer? Like they didn't have
anybody. They were running stuff for. We all love Pelle Larsson, right? But like they were running stuff for Pelle Larsson. At the end of the game, we just need somebody to create something on the ball and try to make things a little bit easier for Bam to get him in his sweet spots. And yeah, they really missed Tyler. I thought they missed Tyler Hero way more than Milwaukee missed Damian Lillard.
Yes.
Because at least Milwaukee still had their number one scoring option in Giannis. The offense runs through Giannis. You could argue Miami's offense runs through Hero more than it runs through Bam, although it's definitely both of them. But so you've got that. So they've clinched a play-in spot. You look at the other end. Here's where I'm leaning, David, and I know you just said that tanking doesn't work, but like you're locked into the play-in tournament. We're talking about either playing the first game. You're going to have to win back-to-back games in the play-in tournament to make the playoffs, and then play Cleveland in the first round. So you're locked into this. Why not hedge your bets and just lose the next 4 games if you're Miami? You're already in the play-in tournament. The only thing that you can accomplish is whether or not you play that. I mean, heck, beat Chicago on Tuesday. I don't know. But I would say lose out the rest of the games. You're still in the 9-10 game anyway. Doesn't matter. And at least at that point, you're hedging your bets that if you do happen to lose in the play-in tournament and not do the thing that no team has ever done, which is to go from the 9-10 game into the playoffs, then at least you improve your draft position, your lottery position. So Miami are tied with Phoenix with the 10th best odds in the lottery. If you lose out, you could potentially get into that 9th spot where you have about a 0.25% chance of moving into the top 4. It's just, you improve your lottery odds a little bit. I know nothing's guaranteed, but you're kind of guaranteed to be in this 9-10 game anyway. So why not just improve your lottery odds? Just lose out, maybe. There's an argument for it.
I don't necessarily have a problem with that either. Like, it's not even about the draft odds. To me, it's really just about making sure that these guys get a prolonged rest. If you're really serious as a franchise, and this team certainly has reflected that over the last few weeks, if you're really serious, sit everybody. Sit Bam, because he's exhausted. Sit Duncan. Sit everybody.
Make sure Tyler's thigh contusion's ready to go 100% or as close to it.
Absolutely. Give Davion Mitchell a break, whatever. Like, he's done enough. Like, all these players that are playing these heavy minutes, rest them. Yeah, they might be a little rusty for that one game, but they're going to be healthy, and I think that's going to help them in the long run. If you're looking or the short-term long run, in terms of like being able to get past whoever you have to face in the play-in tournament, and then maybe even face the Cleveland Cavaliers. So, like, I think it makes sense. I think it's better for them because, again, you're not going to advance anything noteworthy. You're not going to be able to accomplish anything really if you win the next 4 games. I know Spo isn't built like this, but to have these guys healthy and to give these guys at the end of the bench an opportunity to play some heavy minutes, the G League guys, some
the
of
Summer League
the
slammers, man. Let's get them out there. Josh Christopher, Isaiah Stevens, Khalil Ware. Let's put them all out there for
Terry Rozier gets all the minutes. Yeah,
get Terry Rozier out there. Let him shoot out of whatever this says. Give him 30 shots a game. Go full LaMelo for the next 4 games. Just watch that.
That's what he did in Charlotte. Yeah. Why not? Absolutely. I think it's. I mean, my concern is the rust, right? Like, if you take the next 4 games off, or in Tyler's case, the next 6 games off, would it be problematic if you have to have a must-win game against Chicago and you're on the road in Chicago?
Right. Well, if you're not better than these teams in front of you, right, and you can't make any real claim that you are, you could at least be healthier than these teams in front of you, maybe.
No doubt.
And you have teams like Cleveland, Oklahoma City, Denver, whatever. Like, these teams are resting players here and there just to make sure they're healthy for the playoffs. We've never seen a 10 seed just be like, we got to make sure we're good for the playoffs. We're not worried about the seeding.
We've got a long playoff run ahead of us here, so
right.
We're thinking. We want to be playing these games in June, so we got to sit these guys down in mid-April.
I love it.
Yeah, that has never happened before, but why not? Be the first, make history yet again without Jimmy Butler.
This is what they do. We're going to look ahead to the offseason. There's 2 players on this roster whose roles are the most up in the air. But before we even get to that, was this season a failure for a couple of Heat youngsters? We'll tell you who they are and whether they should be part of Miami's future after this here on Locked On Heat.
Today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Have you ever checked your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, maybe doing a little shopping, or maybe going out for a few drinks or some entertainment, a concert here and there, it's easy to lose track, but that's where Monarch Money comes in. They're your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So you stop just managing your money and you start building wealth. When you start using Monarch, you'll realize just how much you're spending on things you might not need to, especially food delivery. Now you can budget smarter and save more. And instead of juggling multiple apps, you can just use Monarch to check your finances, you track your spending, and you can even plan long-term goals. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com and you get 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNBA for half off your first year. Go make sure to visit monarchmoney.com. We'll be right back.
Thanks again for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Your favorite NBA team has a free daily newsletter. Introducing the Locked On Heat newsletter, one stop for ultimate Heat and league coverage with local analysis and amazing writing from Katie Heindel, Mike Shearer, and Locked On fantasy basketball tips from Josh Lloyd. Sign up for free now at LockedOnDaily.com. Happy birthday to David Ramil.
Oh,
are you a cake guy?
Yes.
A birthday cake guy, specifically.
Birthday cake, yes. I know some people like ice cream cake.
Yes.
No.
No.
No, ice cream cake is hideous. It's an abomination, Wes.
What? Is it because it's not really cake? It's just ice cream in the shape of a cake? Is that your problem with it, or do you just not
Yeah, and
like
it's
the
just
way
I
it
don't
tastes?
even like that. Yeah, I don't like anything about it. The concept, the idea.
What? Have you
Yeah,
had
sorry.
it?
Of
Or
course.
I don't know.
I'm a child. I'm young enough to know, old enough to know, really, Carvel cakes, ice cream
The
cakes, and
crunchies?
Cookie
Come on.
Puss. Yeah, I listen to the Beastie Boys. Come on. See, listen. This is no ice cream cakes here, brother.
So
Sorry,
what's your go-to birthday cake? Dream birthday cake?
man. Um, I don't know. I like a nice, good, like there's a bakery here. I don't even know what to call it. I'm gonna probably butcher something in Spanish too. Like there's a bakery here that does like a really good cake, and Cakes by Lucila, I think they're called, and their cakes are fantastic, and they've got a really good selection there. They do like wedding cakes and stuff like that, but they do like good birthday cakes too. Yeah, that's my ideal cake. But you know what? I don't generally indulge in birthday cake either.
I'm not
Too
a
many
big birthday
candles at
cake
this
guy.
point.
I'm not a big birthday cake guy. It's too
But when
sweet.
you
I'm not a
do, you go
sweets
ice cream
guy.
cake.
If I have to, I'll go ice cream cake. I love like take me to dinner and let's
Yes.
just give me a slice of cheesecake. I know that's not even technically cake, that's more of a pie, but that's
You get a
like my
Cheesecake Factory?
go-to. I don't love the Cheesecake Factory. It's a little overwhelming for me.
Wow.
It's a little too
Wow.
much.
Considering we've had like an
We did-
episode with Cheesecake Factory, several episodes, if I'm not mistaken.
That was when I
of
was
the
a younger
Cheesecake
man,
Factory.
David. I could handle the glitz and the glamour of the Cheesecake
Yeah.
Factory, the pomp and
You're-
circumstance. But now these days,
I mean,
I need
how
like
else
3 items on a menu. It's
how
too
else are
much.
you gonna embody the NBA spirit? Like nothing says
true.
I'm an NBA player in my early 20s like
Right,
Cheesecake Factory.
right. Then ordering chicken Alfredo at the Cheesecake Factory. Moving on. So we got a couple things that I want to hit on before we get out of here. But the number one thing I want to talk about right now is Jaime Jaquez and Nikola Jovic. We're talking a lot about guys that are in the rotation, playing and things like that. But Jaime's been on the bench. Nico obviously hurt. Doesn't look like he's going to come back this season. So, you know, the framework of this is very simple, David. And I'm going to ask you a question, and it might be harder to answer it. But has this season been a failure for these 2 first-round picks that it felt like the Heat had a lot riding on both of these guys, right? Jaime, there was talk locally, even though I never was totally bought in on like, oh, he's a future all-star and all these things. And then Nikola Jovic, I thought he played really well from the most part. And you and I labeled him the most important player on this team after the all-star break. And then he got hurt, unfortunately. But because of the injury to Nico, because of Jaime just basically losing his job, his role in the rotation right now, I think this season has been a failure for both of those guys, unfortunately.
I agree. I think it has been a failure. I think you look at the expectations for both of them, and yes, the context of the season and where the ups and downs after the trade of Jamie Butler and the tension before that and everything that they've tried to accomplish since then has to provide some kind of nuance when you're looking at it. But in terms of what the expectations were for each, Nico was a starter at the beginning of the season. I know that seems like an eternity ago, but he really struggled in that role. And then he kind of flourished as a bench player. And then he kind of was on and off for a long time there as the whole trade debacle kind of played out in real time. And then eventually, yes, as you pointed out, he was getting significantly better. Jaime, for one, unfortunately, never did find his footing between a lingering injury, the fact that he just looked like limited in terms of his impact and whether or not teams had figured out what it was that he does well, that he just seemed completely removed from being the impactful player that we expected him to be. Not an all-star. That's ridiculous in terms of those are high-level expectations that he may reach at some point. I don't think he was going to come close to achieving that this season, but you want him to be, and I thought he was a legitimate 6th man of the year candidate. I thought, given what we had last year,
his FanDuel odds are really good.
Yes.
That was a common opinion, yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was going to be a realistic thing. Like, I mean, he had nice playoff moments there, etc. You thought he was going to be able to build off that. Unfortunately, remember Summer League? Like, he came in for those 2 games and whooped everybody up, and it was like, okay, this guy he's not Summer League level. He's like beyond that. Like, there's very few players that maybe they have a little NBA experience and they come into Summer League and they just whoop up so badly that they don't belong there. That was the case with Jaime. And so you continue to build off those expectations, and it just hasn't manifested this season. So I think given the context of what we expected from both of them, absolutely it's been a failure.
The Nico thing is cut and dry. He got hurt. And I thought he really did settle into a role as a sixth man, and I thought it really worked. But he got hurt, and that's the reality of it. With Jaime, Zach Lowe went on his podcast before he left ESPN and said, I think secretly the Heat are hoping, because remember there was a debate, who's going to be the fifth starter? We kind of knew it was Terry Rozier, Tyler Hero, Jimmy Butler, Bam Adebayo, who's the fifth guy going into the year. And Lowe basically said, hey, I think that if you gave the Heat truth serum, they want Jaime to win that job in training camp. And I think he was right. I think that internally they had really high expectations for Jaime. That this was the kind of guy who can be the difference between what last season was and what this season was, in addition to Terry Rozier. And you could point to a lot of things about why this season went wrong. And I would argue that the number one reason why it went wrong was because Jimmy Butler sort of sabotaged the whole thing. But beyond that, Terry Rozier's struggles have been really loud. Jaime Jaquez's struggles have been almost as important. And they haven't been as loud or as talked about because the Terry Rozier stuff is just really ugly when it's out there on the court. And, you're paying this guy $20+ million. You traded a first-round pick, all these things. But Jaime was a first-round pick. They unlocked that first-round pick with Oklahoma City, which was going into that draft because they wanted to pick in that draft. And they got the guy they wanted in Jaime. But because they unlocked that pick, we're dealing now with these Oklahoma City Thunder pick protections that we've been talking about. Do you miss the playoffs, make the playoffs? This is what happens. So, there's quite a bit invested in Jaime Jaquez Jr. here.
No doubt.
And he has been so far from what it is that Miami has needed him to be. He has not even he hasn't taken the step forward that they hoped. And if anything, you can argue he's taken a step back. And the shooting numbers are really bad. His stuff that was in the paint, the floater area kind of stuff, all that stuff that he was really good at as a rookie have been really bad this year. And that might be the number one sort of statistical area where he's struggling. That obviously has led to, fewer points and all these things. I don't know. I don't know if it's just the fact that he started the year with a groin injury and then there was the stomach flu thing a couple of times during the season. I don't know what's going on with him physically, but it's been a bad year and the Heat need a lot more. Now, that said, very rarely is this stuff linear when you talk about player development. And he can come back in his third year and boom, maybe this was just a sophomore slump and he starts looking like the player everybody hoped that he could look like. But there is no question that it's been a failure. And because of that, his role on the team is a little up in the air. Is he? I don't know what his trade value is, David. I don't know how the Heat, if they hoped that he would win the job in training camp last year and then they saw this year. I do wonder if you gave the Heat truth serum what they think about Jaquez's future now.
I think they're still optimistic about it. I mean, not reporting anything, but my guess would be that you could probably look to some things that have been happening in terms of his health and everything else and still believe that he can be an impact player. But I think you probably also have to temper those expectations a little bit, and see that maybe he could be a valuable starter at best, that he might just eventually settle into a really strong bench role. And that's perfectly fine. Like, somebody has to fill out the ends of these rosters, and a very good and productive bench player that fills that role for 10+ seasons and eventually gets a couple starts mixed in here and there, that's a really good player. I mean, that means that you've achieved something in terms of drafting that player and being able to mold them into something valuable. I just also think that if the talk regarding Kevin Durant is real, and you don't imagine that it isn't, because Miami has tended to always try to acquire a superstar. They've gone after Durant before, as we pointed out many times. You might have to give up Andrew Wiggins. And if that's the case, then you're going to need Jaime. You're going to need Nico. And so I don't think it's a matter of overvaluing players. You might have to give up one of them in order to acquire Kevin Durant. And that's probably something that fans are okay with, given the fact that you didn't see a lot from either of them. At this point, would you say that Nico has more trade value than Jaime?
Yes.
Yeah. I think that's pretty
He's also younger, right?
That's
he's younger. He's bigger. There's a little more skill there.
Flashes,
he showed more.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think you said the right thing. You got to temper expectations out with Jaime. I think it was just so much was kind of shoveled onto his plate in his rookie year, and then in the summer, and the expectations were just so out of whack that maybe he had a hard time living up to that too. Again, we're just guessing. We're not reporting. We haven't done anything on that, but it is interesting to see where things go with him and with Nico. But we're gonna move on. You mentioned trades there. What if the Mavericks talked to other teams when they were actively trading Luka Doncic to the Lakers? One NBA insider took a look at what the Heat could have offered for Luka, and I think fans will be split on what it would have taken to get him, according to this guy. So we're going to tell you what the Heat would have had to part with after this.
Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA playoffs and play-in are almost here, and FanDuel is giving you new customers an incredible way to get in on the action. Right now, when you join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, you'll get $250 in bonus bets if your bet wins. Listen, you're going to love how FanDuel makes betting so easy. Whether it's picking your favorite team or diving right into player props, it's simple to play. From three-pointers to steals to assists, FanDuel has so many ways of betting on your favorite player props. Plus, after the game tips off, you can even combine live prop bets into a same-game parlay for a chance to win big. So don't miss out. Head out to FanDuel.com and claim your $250 in bonus bets today. That's FanDuel.com. We'll be right back.
Thanks again for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Like and subscribe on YouTube. Follow us on your favorite podcast app. Congrats to Micky Arison for his induction to the Basketball Hall of Fame. A little surprising. I don't know. Carmelo Anthony. Was it Sue Bird? Who else was inducted?
Sue Bird. The 2008 men's Olympic team. U.S.
That was nice. But to have the Heat owner, I mean, congrats. Like, legitimate congrats. You just don't really see the owners, I suppose, inducted to the Basketball Hall of Fame all that much.
Yeah, we were talking about it before we started recording, and I don't know that many people even were aware of this. Listening to this podcast, I'm sure nobody knows this, but the Indiana Pacers owner was inducted last year when they were in Indiana, when the All-Star game was in Indiana, and the Hall of Fame, that's when they was announced, and whatever, it was a big deal, and I don't think anybody really cares.
Nobody cares.
The owner,
the fans
having an owner, like, I think Micky actually kind of said it best, like the best owners in professional sports tend to be invisible ones.
Right.
Like, you just don't want to be Jerry Jonesing all over the place, because that's where things get really bad. You don't want to be that guy, because that's when you get your hand in the cookie jar, or you're one too many cook in the kitchen, and your spatula
you end up
is
what
the
the Phoenix
biggest
Suns
and the
just
best.
did. You got Matt Ishbia calling the shots on Kevin Durant and Bradley Beal.
I still
trades.
believe that could have worked. It just
not after Beal though.
I don't think anybody projected that Bradley Beal would crap the bed as badly as he has.
I think everybody knew he wasn't worth $55 million a year or whatever it is.
That's fine, but he was only supposed to complement your other all-stars in Kevin Durant and Devin Booker. It just didn't work out that way, and that you couldn't build the rest of the roster. They tried. They got some nice role players here and there. They just, I think everybody looked at them this offseason and thought they might have been a pretty solid team. But anyway, that's Locked On Suns talk. Go check out Brandon Clean for that. I think Micky has been a very good owner in terms of making the right choices. Like he brought on Pat Riley in 95. He's like, you know what? I don't know how to run this. Pat, what do you want? And like, you can read the details of how that's all played out, but giving Pat that sort of control, the ownership stake in the team, the ability to call the shots, for all the conversation
and everything starts with him too. I mean, it really does. 3 coaches: Van Gundy, Riley, Spo,
Eric Spoelstra.
Keeping the arena downtown. I think it's a really big deal. You look at where these arenas are being built. Like the Clippers had to, granted it's a little bit different because they were sharing it with the Lakers, but they're out in who knows where, Orange County now. It's you look at football stadiums; they're not even built in the same cities that the teams are named after anymore. So keeping that arena downtown is a really big deal. I think there's a lot of stuff. Obviously, he's deserving. It's just sort of funny that these owners are getting inducted to the Basketball Hall of Fame, where fans don't really. The Basketball Hall of Fame is for fans, isn't it? Nobody's like, oh, I can't wait to see the owner's wing of this building. This is sort of why teams have their own individual Hall of Fames and Ring of Honors and stuff. But hey, congrats to Micky Arison. Don't make me make light of it. It is an accomplishment. Let's go to this from ESPN's Bobby Marks. So he published an article Monday morning about, I think it's fascinating, what teams could have offered had the Mavericks opened up trade talks for Luka before the deadline. So obviously, it's infamous at this point that Nico Harrison, the Mavericks GM, was only speaking with the Lakers and Rob Pelinka, and that's how you get Luka on the Lakers. But what would what would the Heat have offered had the Mavericks called and said, "Hey, look, don't tell anybody, but we're quietly shopping Luka. What's your best offer?" And so here's what Bobby Marks came up with: Bam Adebayo, Haywood Highsmith, Jaime Jaquez, and then 2 first-round picks, 2029 and 2031, both of them unprotected completely. And this is what he writes: It's important to note that on February 1st, when Luka was traded. On February 1st, Jimmy Butler is still on the Heat roster and has yet to be dealt to Golden State. But considering Dallas is prioritizing a big front court that can compete for a championship, Adebayo is the perfect fit, not Jimmy Butler. The Heat still have Tyler Hero, Kel'el Ware, and the returns from a potential Butler trade to build around Doncic. Doncic? Why am I having Luka? Doncic. Why am I having a hard time with that? So I think that's interesting, and I think it's right.
Yes.
I think if the Heat were to offer Jimmy Butler, Dallas would have said thanks, but no thanks.
Would they have kept Jimmy?
Well, I think if you trade Bam and then this stuff, but it's basically what we're talking about is Bam for Luka, Bam and 2 firsts for Luka. Then you still, I think, trade. I think maybe you still trade Jimmy because I don't think Jimmy wants to be here. Would that have changed? By then, I think the ship had sailed. Like even if Riley and Micky Arison at that point say, "Hey, we'll give you the max extension," I think Jimmy's like, "Dude, like these bridges have been burnt." Like it was a month ago that I was just telling everybody that I have no joy on the court.
I don't know. I really
would you have wanted to keep him? I think more interesting. Would you have wanted to keep Jimmy with Luka? That's more interesting than trying to guess what would have happened.
Yes, yes. And you know what? I'm accused all the time of being a Bam apologist or whatever. I would have done this trade 100%.
You have to, don't you?
Oh, I mean, Bam again, perhaps my all-time favorite player in a Heat uniform, and this is an MVP player. This is Luka Doncic. Like this is it. This is your path to being a playoff team, guaranteed every season with him on there, and your ceiling is so much higher. And yeah, you can keep Tyler Hero, a young up and coming player who can score 25 points per game, and somehow maybe you might even be able to keep Jimmy Butler, or who knows what you're able to flip Jimmy for at that point. Maybe you can shore up the rest of the roster, acquiring a power forward, and all of a sudden you've got Luka to Kel'el Ware, lobs all the time, and you see him getting unlocked the way Derek Lively was last year. And all of a sudden, you got Tyler being a complimentary off-ball scorer who can play, again, drop 25 points per game and maybe even more in a given night. You've got these ridiculous assist passes from Luka Doncic on a regular basis, and you might be able to shore up whatever you get in terms of trading Jimmy Butler. You're a contender, 100%.
I think you got to try to keep Jimmy. I think you offer the extension and say, "Hey, look, we just traded for Luka. A lot of stuff has just changed. Right. Would you sign the extension? Can we barely hatch it on this? Would you sign the extension? We can all just put out an email press release and say psych, and just nothing ever happened. Another Tuesday in Miami. But like you look at what Luka is doing with the Lakers. They are a contender. Maybe not the favorites, but absolutely a contender with Luka Doncic. Nailed it. LeBron James, Austin Reeves, and you said, like, what would Luka do with Kel'el Ware? Look at what you said, Derek Lively. Look at what Luka's doing with Jackson Hayes right now. He looks like a Hall of Famer. Yeah. Since owners are getting into the Hall of Fame, Jackson Hayes is probably on his way. But is this not, would that not have been this version of Lakers East, where Jimmy's in the LeBron role, you've got Luka, Tyler Hero is sort of that Austin Reeves third scorer who can pop off and be your number one scorer on any given night. You got that young lob threat in Kel'el Ware. You're really well coached. JJ Redick has done a hell of a job with the Lakers. Obviously, Spo is, I still think he's the best coach in the NBA. That's a contender. I think you do try to keep Jimmy. And if Jimmy says, you know what, Luka's cool and all, but I'm just so angry at this organization, I still want out. Okay, you still trade him Golden State. Let's say you get the same stuff back. All right. You got Luka, you got Wiggins, you got Hero. You're still getting Davion Mitchell in the building. You got the draft pick coming over. You got 2 picks in this upcoming, or 1 pick, I guess, because then if you're the Heat, you probably keep your pick because you make the playoffs. But yeah, I think it's unfortunately a no-brainer, but you have to do it. You'd have to do it. Fascinating. Too bad the Mavericks actually did. Is that a better package than what they got?
I think Anthony it would make Davis, Mavericks fans happier. Like AD, the better player, perhaps right now, but I mean, in terms of the future, like what Bam would do, I mean, I think they would love Bam there, and they would see him continue to try and be everything that he is here in Miami. And yeah, he'd have his warts, like every player. Like, I mean, again, AD is a better player. AD is not going to be able to play as many games per year as Bam has, and that's going to continue to be the case. Yeah,
I think that's fair. All right, that'll do it for us today. Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Like, comment, and subscribe on YouTube. Follow us on your favorite podcast app. We'll be back tonight with our reactions to Heat Sixers. Talk to you then.